The Physics of Horseback Riding by Nikki Letourneau. You may think that horseback riding is easy and is a leisurely activity, but I'm here to prove you wrong. Today I will discuss the physics behind horseback riding. The first thing I'm going to talk about is friction. Friction is the resistance that one surface or object encounters when moving over another. One way that friction affects horseback riding is when the horse's hair rubs against the horse's saddle pad. The saddle pad is a blanket, pad, or fabric inserted under the saddle. These are usually used to absorb sweat, cushion the saddle, and protect the horse's back. It is usually made of wool, cotton, or synthetic fabrics with similar characteristics. The movement between the hair and the pad creates friction, and this reduces the motion of the saddle pad. I know, don't let him bite you because he's only hurt. Stop pushing out, Bernie. You know that you're pushing out. This must be really attractive. Another form of friction in horseback riding is when the rider's legs rub against the saddle. A saddle is a girthed, usually padded and leather-covered seat for the rider of a horse. The leather of the saddle and the leather of the boots or half chaps rub together and weaken the leather of the saddle. This produces heat and can cause damage to the leather saddle. The rubber pieces on my pant legs help to create friction between my legs and the saddle. Wearing gloves helps you to grip the reins. The reins are a long, narrow strap attached at one end to a horse's bit, typically used in pairs to guide or check a horse while riding. The friction between your hands and the reins is not as great as that between the gloves and the reins. It reduces the movement of the reins in your hands so that you can grip them better. Also, without gloves, the friction between the reins in your hands can give you blisters between your fingers. These blisters are extremely painful and are always irritated because of their placement.
This is weird.
Newton's second law of motion states that acceleration is produced when a force acts on a mass. The greater the mass of the object, the greater the amount of force needed. An example of Newton's second law is getting up onto the horse's saddle. When you pull yourself into the saddle, it takes a certain amount of force. This force is equal to the mass of the person times the acceleration of that person. Force is equal to mass times acceleration. If a person weighs 54.4 kilograms and accelerates into the saddle at a rate of 1.78 meters per second squared, then a force of 96.832 newtons is required to get into the saddle. Newton's first law states an object at rest stays at rest, and an object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by an equal and opposite force. Changing speeds is an example of Newton's first law because an object at a constant velocity will remain at that velocity unless acted upon by an unbalanced force.
Am I going to lean forward and canter now?
No.
By leaning forward in the walk, the center of gravity is broken, and to regain this balance, the horse has to move into a faster gait. This is Newton's first law because by leaning forward, there is an unbalanced force, and that changes the velocity. When I lean forward at the walk, it pushes the horse into the next gait. A gait is the pace of an animal, especially a horse. The 4 gaits are walk, trot, canter, and gallop. The walk is pretty much what it sounds like. It has 4 beats and is the slowest out of the 4.
Yeah. I mean, it's 4 beats.
The trot is the next gait. It is the equivalent of a jog for humans. It is 2 beats and the horse only ever has 2 hooves on the ground at a time. The canter is the same as a run for humans. It has 3 beats and the horse only ever has 3 hooves on the ground at once. When a horse canters, they have to have the correct lead. The lead is the correct leading leg. When going to the right, the horse's right leg should go forward first. When going to the left, the horse's left leg needs to go forward first. This helps the horse stay balanced. The horse and rider are both more likely to get hurt if the horse is unbalanced. Momentum is motion. It is equal to the mass of an object times the velocity of the object. When the horse stops suddenly, the momentum of the rider forces her to continue to go forward. The last physics concept in horseback riding that I will discuss is gravity. Gravity is the force that attracts a body towards the center of the earth, or toward any other physical body having mass. The posting trot is an example of this. Posting is when you stand up in the saddle when the horse's outside shoulder goes forward.
Yeah.
This helps the horse keep its center of gravity. The center of gravity helps the horse to stay balanced. An unbalanced horse is easier to fall off of because of the way that they move. Here you see what is called a flying lead change. By going across the diagonal of the ring, we change directions. When you change directions in the canter, you have to change the lead. The horse is changing which leg he puts first to end up on the correct lead.
Changed.
See?
You know, from the friction.
Maybe.
You could do the other side if it's easier. It's more in the sun. Oh, same on the other side.
Yeah, especially like
I'll do both. I'm gonna pat the fur a little bit so we can see what it did.